What did you do?
Right, so sorry about the delay.
That's always the.
I feel like I don't need this, but sorry about the delay. We were making sure that this could be recorded for folks to see it who haven't been here. You can't make it here tonight. So I'm Ellen Cronin. I'm the president of the Loaf Section of the Green Mountain Club. I want to thank you guys all for coming tonight. We're really looking forward to Ted's talk. Is Ted talk? So just in case you guys don't know, the bathrooms are in the back and to the right. We have some refreshments, and there's also information about the Green Mountain Club and the Loaf Section of the Green Mountain Club on display on the tables over here. We have a donation jar if you are so inclined in the back. And if you're interested in membership, come and talk to me, or just take a look at what's over on the side there. Or any of these other people. So let's just get forward now. So most of you do not need to be introduced to Ted. Many of you know him already. His website says that he's the poetry guy, but we know him as, what is it that you said, Lynn? We know him as a poet, as a thespian, as a storyteller, and a hiker extraordinaire. So we're delighted he's going to be telling us about his tour of Mont Blanc, and let's just take it away.
Thanks. Welcome to my TED Talk. I've always wanted to say that. Not that I could ever do a TED Talk, actually. The thought of talking without notes for 20 minutes or whatever those TED Talks are is completely daunting to me. And in my sort of stage of my brain development, I could never take that on at this point. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence while I appear at a few notes along the way. But thank you all for coming. When I go to visit schools as a visiting poet and teacher, elementary schools, I very often tell the kids that in my humble opinion, saying thank you is the most important thing we can do. So I'm going to start there and say thank you to Ellen for her introduction. Thank you to the Loaf Section of the Green Mountain Club for hosting us tonight here. A special thanks to Ruth Penfield, who's going to be my my photo controller tonight, but she's also the master of the universe when it comes to publicity. And you saw some of her stuff in the Addy Indy and around and about, and she happens to be a neighbor of mine, and I think had something to do with the snacks over here too. So we'll thank her later again. Thank you to my sweet wife who's here, who helped me out. Her tech-phobe husband had a couple of problems with the slides, and she came to my rescue a couple times. I think that's and Laura Surley, who's here. And of course, CVUS, the church that we're sitting in here, which happens to be my spiritual home. So thank you to them for hosting us here in this awesome sanctuary. And thanks to Morris Earl. Lynn Lukeville is here. Morris, as someone said, is in Tanzania. Some of you know Morris. He does work periodically with Doctors Without Borders, and he happens to be on the border of Burundi and Tanzania. He went there a couple weeks ago. Amazing. He's done that all over the world. I'm pretty impressed at age 70 that he's taken that on. So I know Morris would like to be here, and I want to thank him for inviting me to share with you guys the adventure that I had in September on the TMB. Tonight's topic is, as you know, as you see, or sometimes see, I'm going to have to come over occasionally on my computer to kind of reset with my fingerprint. And I should say right up front that I'm going to take a little bit of time at the beginning of my presentation to sort of set the stage for the photos that are going to come later. So you're going to have to be a little bit patient for the visuals. But there's a kind of an important introduction as to why the TMB was on my radar, a little bit of history of the TMB, and all that stuff. So we might have to reset a couple times while the computer wakes up, to wake the computer back up. We'll start there. Let's leave it there. That's a good place for now. Okay, I'm going to apologize right up front. When I was younger than I am, still sort of feel this way, whenever someone spoke about things that happened in France or in francophone countries, but they weren't native speakers, I would think, oh, that's very pretentious of them to be pronouncing those French words that way. But I grew up with sort of a long history with the language, and that's fine. I can see just fine. Thanks. So you're going to hear that, and Yeah, it may be pretentious to your ears, but I can't do it any other way. So there we go. Oh, speaking of the talk tonight, this appeared in the Yaddy Indy. Ruth assured me that I wrote it. I don't remember writing it. But I'm going to read what she wrote, or what I wrote, that appeared there. Starting in Chamonix, France, the TMB, as it is informally known, takes hikers over high mountain passes, down sweeping valleys, as it circles the Massif, or mountain range around Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in Western Europe. The TMB is 110 miles long, and it's usually completed in 10 days of fairly rigorous hiking. Along the way, this is the poetry, wildflowers proudly bloom, marmots shyly hide, snowflakes sometimes fly, knees complain, trekkers bond, cowbells sing, and eyes pop at the breathtaking alpine vistas. Stops are made each night in teeny mountain towns or in mountain refuges to allow trekkers time to refuel and recharge. That pretty much says it. If there are any questions, we can go home. Okay, that's our introduction. Yeah, but I thought it would be helpful just to remind ourselves of where we are. But I think whoever wrote that pretty much nailed it. So I'm going to give you a couple things. I'm going to give you, sort of break it into 4 sections. Okay. Yeah, I'll leave my finger here. I don't know how we can do it otherwise to reset the... Anyway, that's okay. It keeps people awake. First, a little background, why the TMB was on my radar to begin with. Teeny bit of its history, as I understand it, why it's so popular, and even legendary in the minds of a lot of hikers. Thirdly, and most importantly, we'll get to the observations and photos that I took and made both before, during, and after. Less about logistics and more about the sort of the magic or the mysticness, the mystery of the hike, which I found sort of magical. I went to ChatGPT today, just curious. I said, compose a 40-minute talk about the TMB. And within, of course, 3 seconds, it came back with an outline anyway of what I could talk about. But it didn't definitely, whoever wrote that, they, he, she, whatever it is, definitely didn't nail the magic, the mystery of the hike. So I'll hopefully get to that. And then finally, I will leave time at the end for any questions or observations you might have. So that's sort of where we are. And please don't hesitate to raise your hand and interrupt me if you want, but wait to be called on, because I'm a former elementary teacher and I need to call on you. And if you have corrections, you can talk about that afterwards. I may have got things wrong. Feel free to add any oohs and ahs along the way, because I definitely have a lot of oohs and ahs every day on the trail, for sure. Like this one. This is the Val Ferret, which is on the Italian side of the Massif, looking from the north down towards the Italian frontier, which is at the very end. I'll get back to this slide a little later. But yeah, it's an ooh for sure, or an ah. And you're going to hear me say this. I have this sort of rhapsodic view of the high peaks, but even more the glacially scoured valleys. They just send me off into somewhere. It's pretty cool. So we'll talk about those. I'll talk about what worked, what didn't work, what was delightful, what was not so delightful. All of that should take about 40 minutes. That sound okay to you?
Yeah.
Okay. I smile to think of the good old days when my family owned a Kodak slide carousel. How many had one of those in your house? Yes, my folks would get it out after they finished a trip, and we would sit through these painfully long slideshows on the carousel, because that was the day, that was what we had. It was pretty high tech at the time. And I was lucky, this is a little sidetrack, but growing up I had a couple of godparents. Do we still have godparents? Do we still do that? Okay. I had 2 awesome godparents. My godfather had this wickedly dry sense of humor. And like at our rehearsal dinner at my wedding, he stood up and listed this litany of things that he had paid for throughout my life that he didn't. Like my college tuition and my first mortgage and the red sports car that he gave me, things like that. Of course, none of it was true. So he was famous for that sort of thing. But when he would go to his neighbors, let's call them Bill and Madge, and they would have dinner and then they would pull out the slide projector, he would say to Bill, he'd say, and they were going to show every photographic record of their trip to Paris. He would say, Bill, just show us your top 3 photos. Went through them half in earnest, half in jest, fully in earnest. So that was him. So I've tried my best to find the photos that will sort of summarize my trip. I won't get upset if you go to sleep or need to step out, but I think you'll find them interesting. I'm curious to know, before I begin, how many of you have done the TMB? A few. I know there's a few that aren't here. Bill and Abby Sessions have done it back about 30 years ago, and Susie has done it. She talked to me about that. So that's cool. How many have done hut-to-hut hiking somewhere? Hut, or more precisely with the TMB, it's sort of hut to inn to Refugio. So a bunch of people have done those. You know the drill on that. It's pretty cool. The TMB, as you know, and I'll show you on a map, is centered, it starts in Chamonix, in the corner of France where Italy and Switzerland all come together. And that's known as the Friendship Triangle to some people. And you literally circumnavigate or circumperambulate the Massif. I'll show you on the map in just a second. And so many of you have done much more hiking and trekking than I have, for sure, in various locales, exotic like Vermont. So my rapturous reactions to the magic of the trip might seem over the top or a little bit naive to you, but it meant a lot to me. It had a very special meaning both in the planning and in the anticipation and the doing of it. And as far as the anticipation goes on this trip, I'll give you a little background there. About 100 years ago, when I was just graduated from high school, I'd been accepted at Dartmouth and I was about to matriculate. Isn't that a great sort of risque word, matriculate? I decided to take a gap year. And I was not really ready for the rigors of college. I don't think I was ever really ready for the rigors of college. But I took a gap year, and I had 3 goals on that gap year. One was to nail down my French, because I had studied it in high school, and I wanted to get fluent as I could, best I could. To take some AP courses at a school where I could maybe do that and get some college credits. And then finally to ski race a lot. Because I was a ski racer in high school, here in Vermont and around, and I wanted to be sure I made, if I could, make the Dartmouth ski team. So those are my 3 goals. Through a business friend of my dad's, I found myself in Switzerland at this private school that I affectionately call the School for Extraordinarily Overprivileged Children. This was a school some of you may recognize as I describe it. It has 2 campuses. One is on near Lake Geneva, between Lausanne and Geneva, for the fall and the spring, and then in the wintertime, the entire school moves up into the mountains to the quaint little village of Gstaad, where movie stars have houses, and we skied every afternoon after school. So it was pretty awesome. And 3 results from that gap year really quickly. One was that I found myself way, way over my head in a culture of wealth and privilege that I could only dream of. I pretended to fit in. Secondly, really none of my goals were really fully realized. I had a roommate, a Swiss roommate who wanted to speak English all the time. So, désolé, Nick. That was too bad, buddy. I did take some AP courses and got credits. Did I make the Dartmouth ski team? Yeah, but not the varsity, the A team. I made the B team. So that was sort of an accomplishment. And it's safe to say that as I held a college acceptance in my hand and was a year older than most of the kids at the school, I was 19 older than the seniors there, I was not the most motivated student because I didn't have anything really hanging on my performance there. Thirdly, and most important to this talk, was that while I was there, I was introduced to the Alps, hiking and permanently addicted to the Alps. Hiking, skiing, mountaineering. As it turned out, because of my status as a PG student, and because back then teachers didn't need to get parental releases like they might now, and my special status, I had a maths teacher, he would say, he was from South Africa, who loved to climb. He was a pretty accomplished mountaineer, and I was an accomplished associate, or a fish ready to be hooked. So the two of us went off into the mountains a lot, weekends, vacations, things like that. So he introduced me to the Alps. We did sections of the TMB, that's sort of the link that I'm trying to make here. We did long climbs, long slogs up to the tops of mountains. Some technical stuff, but not too severe. But he left me with this love of the mountains that especially of the Alps, that I carry deep, deep in my heart. So that was pretty impressive, a pretty indelible impression of my 19-year-old self. When I came back to reality in college, I knew I'd left a big part of my heart behind in those towering summits, and the long slogs, and especially those sweeping valleys that you see up there. Fast forward, life intervenes big time. 50 years later, my fierce intentions to return to the Alps finally get realized. I reached semi-retirement last year at age 70, and I've been like boring my friends with my dreams of getting back to the Alps. So this opportunity finally returned to me 50 years later. I started what you could call a temptation campaign. It was twisting arms a little bit, didn't take a lot of arm twisting. We pulled together 5 other guys to do this trek. We were all early 70-somethings, except for my little brother, who was a little bit younger. We were strong of spirit, but less strong of leg every passing day. So with a little prep work, we could do this 110-mile, 10-day trek. 10 miles a day, roughly. 5 to 7 daily hours on the trail. Total elevation gain over the 10 days, 35,000 feet. Piece of cake. Or maybe not. And I was telling someone, Laura maybe, or Ruth, much as this talk was sort of daunting to me, the TMB took on this, as I thought about it and got closer to it, it took on this persona, could I really do this? And so many of the websites that talk about it, and there are like 50,000 of them, I think, altogether, that promote this amazing hike, they always say, get in shape, buddy. That's out of the bottom line. So I did not want to be the one member of this 6-man group who was the one who was keeping everybody, slowing everybody up, that's for sure. I don't know if that's a male thing. I think it's more of a human thing, I think, right? You don't want to be the one that's slowing everybody down. So there was training. Pretty serious for the year before. I hiked a few times with Morris and Lynn, hiking up the Snow Bowl a few times a day, and the usual suspects: Mount Stark, Mount Ellen, Mount Mansfield, Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire. Lots of squats and lunges in my basement. Some weights down there. Long bike rides, things like that. So I felt when the time came, I hadn't tested the hours on trail thing. I had never done 5 hours on trail. I did a whole bunch of the TAM here in Middlebury, the trail around Middlebury. Spent a ton of time up and down and all around on Chipman Hill, trying to get in some elevation and mostly trail time. But that time on trail thing was still kind of a mystery, and it was going to be okay as it turned out. But I'll get back to the other guy's fitness in just a second. So we could do this. We could do this with a little help from an outfitter who could do the heavy lifting for us, who could both practical and logistical heavy lifting, schlepping our bigger bags to the next evening's accommodations, except for a couple of places where we couldn't get that done. But most importantly, arranging lodging, making sure that we had a place to stay every night, with a soft bed and yummy food and a place to maybe get a beer, that kind of thing. So that was a hot shower, of course. So all we 6 had to do was carry day packs that just had rain gear, weather gear, and our hydration stuff, and food for lunch. So it was pretty awesome. And those of you who've done this sort of outfitter planned hiking have found that it's a pretty awesome way to go. I'm trying to convince Lynn and Morris that this is the way to go. Morris makes all the accommodations, I think, right? And you guys carry food, of course, for lunch, and you're getting food in the refugios and refuges where you're stopping, but they carry everything. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, and I do want to say, just as a hats off to those of you who manage the trails, like this section of the Green Mountain Club, the stretch of the long trail they do, or those of you who work on Chipman Hill for the rest of us slugs, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you can do it with an outfitter. You can either do self-guided or guided. And we chose self-guided because we all had mountain experience. This, for the most part. As I said, there's I started out by doing internet research like everybody does. There's like 50,000 websites that talk about the TMB with lots of videos and guides for, gear to bring and all that stuff, so I won't get into that. If you do a guided one, you have this usually overly enthusiastic, well-knowledgeable guide who takes you and hauls you around and really does provide a lot of valuable information as you go. But we all just had our phones with the GPS mapping that they provided for us, and we're on our own. But the trail is pretty well marked. And nowadays, because of the volume of people that do the trail, you need to make your reservations like months in advance, even a year in advance. So getting an outfitter is kind of the way to go. I think someone who really has an inside track who can get things set up. When Bill and Abby Sessions did the TMB in the early 90s, Bill said they would arrive in a town, a little hamlet, or an inn in a little or at the refugio, and they'd go, oh, this looks cute. Let's stay here tonight. And sure enough, they had a room. But now you need like a year of planning. So we looked at company reviews and prices and customer service responses from these people that I tried a dozen or so different outfitters. And we chose a Utah-based outfitter named Alpenwild. Anybody used Alpenwild? Some of you know Buzzy Tate and Chris Lioli here in town. They did the Via Alpina across Switzerland 2 years ago, and they used Alpenwild, and they had glowing reviews. So that was a nice confirmation that we were on the right track. And they were awesome. They were just awesome. So I won't get into the specifics of planning, like the gear you take and things like that. But as you know, especially in the Alps, you have to be ready for anything, pretty much. So let's get to the trek, okay? You guys have been patient. That's what you paid your big bucks for tonight. Let's go to let's go one more, please. Let's go sideways. Can you go sideways? On the arrow too?
Oh,
Yeah. That's a picture of me on Mount Stark. Happy to be there. Okay, good. You go to the next one. So let's start here. This is the image I took off the internet, obviously. What you're looking at here, I have my pointer. We're looking down the valley of the Loaf, the Arve River, which runs down through Chamonix, starting up here in the foothills. This is the closed end of the valley of the Loaf, where the TMB comes towards the last stages of our trip. It comes down here and then continues up. And you can see the valley of Loaf is very steep-sided. Some of you, who's been to Chamonix? Bunch of, you know this. Pretty awesome. It's sort of almost too steeply sided for my liking. At the top of these steep-sided valleys, you have these balconies that are sort of like flat ridges, and you can walk across them. And over here, as we came back over the top at the end of our hike, you go along the balcon over here. They call it the Balcon Sud. I don't know why. That's the south balcon, but actually it's north. I don't know why. On this side, on the south side, or rather, excuse me, the north side, there's lifts coming up. All the skiing, if you go to Chamonix to ski, I don't recommend it. Because it's sort of intermediate and there's not much. There's a little bit down here, but you have to take up the lifts, and all the skiing is up on the balcon up here. And up here at the very back, you can see a peak, 2,500 meters. That's Le Blaivon, which is a high place that's accessible by cable car. I'll talk about that in a second. So the TMB sort of progresses or continues along here at the very end. Looking on the south side of the valley, you've got a balcon here. Lots of glaciers coming down. Here's Mont Blanc in the distance. It's 15,700 feet high, highest in Western Europe. This is the Aiguille du Midi, which is accessible by this awesome cable car that goes up in 2 stages. And there's an amazing building up there sitting absolutely on the peak. Some of you have been there. And you can actually take a gondola across the top of the glacier and drop into Courmayeur on the other side, which is pretty cool. So that's just a lay of the land for you a little bit, and we lost it. Well, I know it time's out, sorry. Okay, you can go to the next one. Okay, so this is Chamonix, famous statue in the center of town. And these two guys in the 1700s are looking up at the Mont Blanc, which is, in this light, it's not very visible in the screen. But this guy is saying to the other guy, Bon Dieu, no one will ever get back alive if they climb up there. So yeah, it's a pretty daunting visual to see the Mont Blanc up there. So those guys are pretty famous, two Champagnards. So the TMB's magical reputation is what draws people there. Thousands, literally thousands of people do it every year. 3,000 of them do it in a short amount of time. I'll tell you about that in a second. But Chamonix is your TMB base, it's your start and end point, and there's something mystical about that place too. Chamonix has been an epicenter of rock climbing, mountaineering for a long time. Some of my climbing, my heroes of mountaineering were from there. I'm going to show you a couple of them right now. This is my brother in town looking down a normal street scene. You can see Aiguille de Midi, the high point right here, and Mont Blanc is just sort of hiding behind that. But the cable car goes up to that little bitty point up there, which we did before we started our trip. So let's go to a couple of famous people. Oh, this is one of the buildings in town. This is the Bureau de Guide. It's where the guides, you can enlist the guides' help. And you can't really see it very well in this slide, but the side of the building has this extraordinary trompe-l'oeil painting of all these famous, from the top, the earliest, all the way down to the 1960s and 70s era guides. So they're all there painted on the side of the building. It's pretty awesome. Okay, let's go to the next one, Ruth. This is Gaston Ribouffa, famous guide, a famous climber from the 60s. He's just taking a leisurely stroll on the Massif. Here's one more of him. There he is. Famous photo. I don't know what the mountain is in the back, but yeah, pretty striking, pretty cool. And then there was Walter Bonatti, the next slide. He died about 10 years ago at age 81, but he retired from climbing at age 35 because he just had done enough. He'd done all over the world. He did a famous, go to the next slide, Ruth, that'd be great. This is the Aiguille de Dreux, which is the DRU, the Dreux, and Walter Bonatti in 1955 climbed this thing. In fact, the climb he made is no longer there because there was this humongous rock slide, the entire thing fell to the ground. But he climbed this solo in 1955, sheer face, and he spent 6 days on the face, 5 of them, in a sling at night. And it's the story goes that he was stuck at one point. He couldn't get past this particular overhang, so he tied everything he had together: his ropes, his slings, his shoelaces, and he pendulumed over to a ledge that could continue the climb. He was absolutely legendary. So Walter Bonatti was another one of my heroes early on. Okay, so you're going to discover I'm a map guy. Here's the map of the TMB. Chamonix is right here. You start actually in Les Houches. I'll show you a picture of our start point. You work your way around counterclockwise is the most common way of going. All the way, it's about 110 miles around. North to south, it's about 60 miles. About 20 miles at its widest point there. There happens to be a tunnel, some of you maybe have taken it, I haven't, that goes from Chamonix to Courmayeur. So if you wanted to bail out, and there's the cable car that takes you over the top if you want to do that. So I'll bring this map up. I'm a map guy, and I'm going to sort of make that as a reference point for you. I'll keep coming back with this map as we go, just to kind of set the stage for where we are on the hike. But you can basically get the idea. Mont Dolent, which is the sort of the center point of Switzerland here, France here, and Italy on this side is right about here. The frontier, actually, I'm sorry, it's right back here. The frontier into Switzerland is right there. The frontier into Italy is right about here, called La Segna. So that's the basic map. The Massif itself, You can see it right there in the back, has 11 summits that are 4,000 meters or more, that's 13,000 feet high, and piles of others that are less. Mont Blanc is over my shoulder there. Forget about the little guy on my hat, I'll tell you about that in a second. But I just wanted you to see what it looks like, because the very first day after we arrived in Geneva, we decided as a group to take a 3-day sort of a prequel or a warm-up, which was really smart. We arrived 3 days before our trip officially started to sort of get our bodies acclimatized a little bit. Chamonix is only at 3,400 feet. The highest passes that we climbed over were about 8,000 feet, 8,200 feet at the most. So not a big deal, the altitude, but we wanted to sort of get the lay of the land. So we went up, we come off our flight, we're sort of jet lagged. We checked into our cozy hotel down in the valley and took this lift up at the top of, this is the top of Blévent, the peak that you saw in the distance on the far right. So there's that, and then the next slide is me and my roommate, cardiologist, retired cardiologist who took me up Mount Rainier 30 years ago, John Olson. And I just wanted to show this as a kind of another view of how steep the valley is down there into the valley. The balcony is sort of right there. It's kind of hard to tell, but it flattens out a little bit there, and there's trails which we took the next day up there, so you can see. And this is the Dru that Bonatti climbed, and the Aiguille Verte, which is right there. There. So, just to get you orientated on the valley. Okay, Ruth. I took this picture because it shows the impact of climate change on the terrain, on the glaciers especially. Very sad. The glaciers are receding at an amazingly fast rate. I'll show you the Mer de Glace, which is the biggest glacier there, the famous one. Yeah, we'll go there next. So, the next day, after going up to the Blévent side, we went on the south side, took the cable car up to the top of Aiguille de Midi right there, goes straight up. This is the mid-station, so we came back down after that, and then did this walk along the Balcon, all the way down about 10 kilometers to where we had lunch. So we're proceeding down the trail. This is looking down into Chamonix from the south side. This is a little bit of give you a sense for the trail. Fairly exposed in the sense that if you tripped, you'd fall a little ways. But not too bad. That's my brother. Here we are having lunch, bundled up a little bit. It was sort of a warm day. Here we are going down, getting back down into town. But this is the Mer de Glace. And if you saw this 30 years ago, it would be 20 meters deeper in ice, maybe 30, way up here. Unbelievable how much is lost. So that's kind of scary. Okay, let's see. So we were going, back to that map, let's keep it here, that's good. We were going counterclockwise. It seems to me that the clockwise route would be pretty much comparable. You're saying same distance, in terms of the distance traveled, obviously the same. Elevation gain, pretty much the same every day because you're going to the same huts. So I don't know why it's counterclockwise is preferred, but most people do it that way. You did sort of the opposite, right? You did a couple of legs they were clockwise. And I love when Lynn said, when they did a couple of TMB legs in Switzerland on their way to the Zermatt and the haute route, because there were so many people coming counterclockwise, they were going, bonjour, 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 bonjour. Every 10 seconds there was someone to say bonjour to. So it got a little boring after a while. The next day, let's go backwards if you can. This is the 5 guys that I was with. This is the day before we started out. We did a stage of the TMB. We went up on the Balcon Sud, the north balcony, and did the stage. That kind of got us warmed up, and then we didn't have to do it. We got around the other side, back around. So we got that nailed. Okay, we can go to the next one. This is just a funny little picture. This is our carbo loading tea time. We had patisserie and tea the day before we left. Okay, so let's go here we go, back to the map. We're going Chamonix on a bus in the valley. Here's down here the road to Les Houches. We can go to the next one if you want. This is the starting door, so to speak, where you go through. And then you're going up, not this peak, but there's a Mont Bellevue over here that takes you up to start the counterclockwise route around. And we cheated. The outfitter recommended, since it was a long first day, that we should take the cable car up to the top of Bellevue, so we kind of cheated. The two Montanans, you'll see them in a minute, the brothers from Montana, hardcore, wore shorts the whole time. It was like, they had an epithet for it, I won't repeat it, but they said every last step we're gonna do. So they did the climb up Bellevue, but here we are at the top, sort of getting our first leg started the first day. And we headed down the backside to this valley. This is an absolutely stunning valley. If you went over this ridge, you would get to the very chic and expensive resort of Megève, which be fun to ski sometime. But this is this beautiful valley. Up here, just out of sight, is Lake Contamine, which is the little town we spent the first night at. We walked up the road, and in some cases the trail, up this valley. At the very top of your screen here, this little notch right here is the Col de Mont Blanc, which was our first col of 2 the following day, but I just wanted you to see what we're aiming for the next day. Okay, well, thanks. So here we are, 6 of us, standing in the garden of the inn where we spent the first evening, and you can see we all have matching shirts. Okay, Ruth, here's the shirt. It's kind of hard to read. These are the two Montanans. This is Dwight, who is 74, Craig is 71, with me. Classmate, he was the captain of the Dartmouth ski team. He forgot his shirt, so I had to make one on the fly for him. Yeah, let's go to the next one, Ruth. Here's what it said. It said, the Generally Venerables. TMB 2025 ODT, or die trying. So we had fun wearing those. Okay. Yeah, so we were doing this. This was the next day, going up to the Col de Bonhomme, which is kind of off to the left, out of sight, but very typical. Start through a village and up the trail. You back? Okay. Is it gonna slide? It doesn't slide though unless I do this. Sorry for the technical challenges here. Did we find any crabby people on the trail? No. Everyone was happy to be there. As much as we do when we hike in Vermont, I think everybody is happy to be on the trail. We were pretty happy to be there. So we had a pretty good start to the day and to every day. And you can see the weather was so benign. It was amazing. We had blue sky, bluebird days, most days, some overcast. I had a friend, Dartmouth classmate, who did it with 4 women friends the year before. They didn't see the Massif the entire time. It was completely encased in fog and clouds. And they were in rain and snow the whole time in mid-August. So we got super lucky. Super lucky. All right. Okay, speaking of speedy, I'll stop for a second and give you this is misbehaving, but that's great. How many of you have heard of the UTMB? It's a little bit speedier than the regular TMB. It happened 2 weeks before we got there. We did it in 10 days, 11 days with a break. These people do it in 19 hours. Wow. It's a trail running thing. It's sort of the ultimate trail running event in the world. And 3,000 people take off from Les Houches at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And the winner was a guy named Tom Evans, a Brit. 19 hours, 18 minutes, 58 seconds. The next guy, an American, was a half hour behind. The top woman was New Zealander Ruth Croft, right behind him. And it was nuts. It was brutally cold, rainy, raw, muddy, and they did it in 19 hours. Absolutely nuts. And my son-in-law wants to do it. So I said, I will be your support team. Okay, so we've covered that. Thank you for your patience. We did that. This is good. Fantastic. So, chemistry, you could imagine this. Chemistry in a group is pretty important. I did a lot of ocean sailing, racing as a kid. And of course, when you're in a 60-foot boat with 8 guys, chemistry is really important. But on the trail like this, it's pretty important. And we wanted to be sure we were all compatible, which was interesting. I was the point guy, I was the cheerleader, I was the guy who sent out emails every month to everybody saying, here it comes. And I was the coordinator with the Alp and Wild people to make sure we were on track with them. So the day after the election, 2024, I expressed my concern. I wasn't like over the top, but I said, oh man, I'm really kind of disappointed. And one of the guys, one of the unknowns, we had two unknowns, Dwight, who you saw, the Montanan, 74-year-old, and then the other unknown was the doctor, a second doctor named John. He immediately sent me back this blistering email that was filled, sadly, with misinformation and conspiracy theories, and I was like, holy guacamole, this is amazing. And Harvard grad, doctor, geriatrician, whoa. So I decided, but everyone else decided with me, that politics was off the table. And maybe if we were walking separately, we could talk, but mostly we just kept it apolitical. So that was pretty interesting. But the chemistry, and this guy, John, actually had a wonderful sense of humor, dry wit, and he actually contributed a lot to the esprit de corps of the group, as it turned out. His fitness was another question altogether. We'll get to that in a second. So the second day was a long one. We came over the Col de Bonhomme, which is the Col de Bonhomme here. We're having lunch, very typical lunch scene. Maybe 100 people up there having lunch. You can see the other side, but there's sort of a sweeping col there. In the distance around the corner of this, maybe you know this, is the Col de Bonhomme, which is the next col you go over. So we had lunch and then continued up, and over the next col. Here we are at the Col de Bonhomme, the cross of the good man. And this particular cairn, so cool. Lynn and Morris were doing the GR5. You guys know the GR5, the Grand Randonnée 5. It goes all the way from Holland to the Mediterranean. Is that right? Yeah. Pretty cool. They did they didn't hold the thing. They did a section from Lake Geneva down to a little south of here, and they came to this cairn the next day or 2 days later. So we just missed them, which was pretty cool. And it overlaps the TMB just a couple of legs. So here we are here. The next slide is looking down the south on the Grand Randonnée, the GR5. That's the hut, the Col de Bonhomme hut. And Lynn, you took this. Morris was telling me you took this trail, and it was a knife edge at one point, right?
It's called
Cut des Gîtes. Yeah, Morris decided not to do that. Discretion was the better part of valor in that case, I think. But somehow you met up later, a little bit down the trail. Okay, so here we are up here. The descent from here, straight down over, kind of to the left, into this valley down here, was down to a little town called Scheu, which exists, as far as I can tell, only to service TMB hikers. And maybe some caravan campers that can kind of come up the trail. But it's a little town that has a couple of inns, teeny bitty store, and a pretty cozy inn where we stayed. As we came down, Craig, the Montana, the tall one, reminded me that he had put 6 beers in his backpack that he had bought, and we hadn't finished them the day before, so he carried them the whole way on this trek. And we got to the bottom. Here we are, enjoying the beers. And so, team member number 6, who I've already mentioned, I don't know if you recognize him, hopefully you don't, but he'd be fine with me describing this. He was really in extremis in terms of pain. He came down this section limping badly, sore knees, back spasms, tilted like this, and all of us, the 5 of us, were like, really? He's going to continue? And, not much less make the next day. But he did. He hung on there. He left a little ahead of us each time, and when we stopped for hydration, he would continue on. He didn't stop, and his wit was a nice contributing to the esprit de corps of the group. But we were seriously concerned about his health as we proceeded. Could one have quit? Yes, there are places off the TMB where you can catch public transportation back around. It's a long trip, but sometimes you can go through the tunnel back to Chamonix if you needed to. So there's ways to bail out if you needed to, if you have an injury or a failure of spirit. Okay, so let's go to the map again. Here we are. Les Chapieux is down here, the southernmost point. Our next point was a refuge, Refugio Elisabetta. The Col de la Seigne is right here, which takes us into Italy, maybe right about here. So it was a straight kind of climb up to the Col here, and then tipped into Italy there, 8,200 feet. Pretty not a severe climb, but a long one. Refugios, I'll talk a little bit about those. We stayed at two of them. We stayed at Refugio Elisabetta, and then we stayed at Refugio Elena, which is right about there. I'll talk about it in a second, it's not on the map. But you arrive there and you can't, your bags can't be brought there. It's the one place the outfitter can't bring your bags because it's remote. This is the trail up to Elisabetta. You can see we're meeting some bovine support there on the trail. You can go to the next one then, Ruth. We're almost there. We're at the Elisabetta at this point, looking down this sweeping, beautiful valley to, we went down the valley and then up over this thingy, and then around the corner into Courmayeur the next day. But Elisabetta was a pretty cool little refugio. I have a picture of that. This is my brother and me on that down. You can see that particular day we had to wear rain gear, but it wasn't raining, it was just cold. And you can see the tops of the massif were not visible that day, but otherwise they were mostly there for us. So here's the Elisabetta, sits right at the base of this awesome peak right here, I don't know the name. It's run by the Italian Alpine Club, and nice accommodations for the most part. Lovely food, family style. Every single person at the Refugio, not surprisingly, was on the TMB, or was taking, as Catherine Schloff and Merle did a few years ago, they were taking day trips out of Courmayeur up to the Elisabetta to spend the night and then come back down. So people were doing that. But everybody there was paying for the family style meals, and they had a nice bar there, you could get a drink, but really spectacular setting. Okay. I took this in there because this little mule, there was a couple of outfitters that carried everybody's bags, even the heavy ones, everywhere. And these darn mules were amazing. That was as smooth a track as they ever had. We had some rocky roads. Think about the Long Trail, those of you who have been on it. There are places where it's impossibly rocky. Straight up and just rock after rock, just ankles twisting rocks. And we came down, these mules would come down past us. Miraculous, they didn't break their legs. I don't know what they would do if the mule broke his leg, how to get it out of there. But this guy was carrying everybody in the outfitter's entourage, all their bags, this poor mule. So I just wanted to show you that. As we were leaving the next morning, he was leaving with the bags. Okay, so now we're headed down the valley along this ridge to the ski area. Courmayeur is a World Cup site for women. There's GS races there every year. So we were headed down that way over the top and then down into the valley. This is Courmayeur from the top, looking down at this little, not so little town. It's sort of similar to Chamonix in the sense that it's very touristy. Skiing, obviously a lot more skiing than Chamonix. This is the Aosta Valley that heads south, big sweeping valley. This is looking down from the trail. Okay, back on the map. Here's Courmayeur. The next day was my second favorite on the trek. We climbed straight up to the ridge. This is the valley, Val Ferret right here. This is the massif, obviously, that you can see. We headed to the Bonatti. Most people do a really short 10K trip to the Bonatti and spend the night, but we decided that was going to be too wimpy. So we were going to continue on to the Elena up here. Long day. But we had lunch at the Bonatti, and our friend John, the one of the back spasms, did a pretty smart thing. He took a public bus up the valley and then climbed short trip up to the Bonatti where he met us for this lunch. Oh, I'll show you this. This is the valley we saw at the beginning, but here's, you can see the trip we took. This is, Courmayeur is around the corner here, and this is the balcon, or the ridge that we walked along all the way across and then wind through these woods all the way to the to the Elena, which was at the head of the valley, which is coming up next. Here's Craig Stone. Looking across, you can see the spectacular view across at the rocks and the massif. This is the Bonatti where we had lunch. Here we are having lunch, pasta, hot pasta. It was pretty nice. And beers, that was our recovery fuel. On the way, I won't play it for you, but these are cheese cows with their bells. We kind of came across those a fair amount on this trip. There's a couple of female hikers that decided to stop in the middle of the hike and rest on the trail, so we had to work our way around them. We didn't see many animals. This was one. He was hydrating in the now unsanitary trough. But did we see many? We didn't see marmots. We heard them whistling. They're very shy. We didn't see many raptors at all, no birds to speak of. But we did see sheep, lots of sheep, and lots of cows. A little bit of the trail. This is my brother. You can see us winding along. It's a pretty smooth trail in most cases. Early September, late summer, earlier in the summer, this would be raging, this stream, but it was easily passable. So that's another reason to do September. This is more of the trail heading up to the valley. Mont Blanc is right up there, which is the center point for the three countries. And here we are. It's sort of a typical view of the trail. Here we are looking back down the valley. This is looking back down at the Italian frontier, Col de la Seigne at the other end. We stopped for photographs a lot. It was hard to find, to not look. This is the Refugio Elena at the very end of the valley. I took this off the internet. You can see it's all stripy, but it's a pretty sizable Refugio. They had hot water, which was great, and they had lovely food. And I'll show you another view of it from the back. This is the patio in the back where everybody hung out in the sun, which was lovely, 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 looking down the valley. And then we looked up to the top from the patio. When we stayed there, there were always dorms. This was a dorm with 60 of us in there, male and females. Obviously, the showers and bathrooms were separate, but we were all together in the dorm, 60 of us, and absolutely needed eye patch, eye covers, and earplugs. And all you needed to bring was your sleep sack, your nylon sleep sack, because they provided blankets, pillows, and pillowcases, and nice hot showers, and lovely, lovely food. So this was the Elena. Here we are going up to the fairly severe climb up to the Swiss frontier. We stopped for a break there. We crested that and we came over this other side. This is finally back into Switzerland, and we're working our way down this very barren landscape. Fairly busy, you can't see them, but there's a fair number of hikers moving with us. We kind of moved along with everybody else. Not a lot of privacy for taking a pee. I was really impressed at the bladder tenacity of our fellow hikers, especially the women. As I said, 7 out of 10 on the trail were women. And wow, there's not many places to take a private pee. You just did it. We stopped at a mid-mountain hut. You couldn't stay here, but they had a lovely restaurant. And here we are having our usual recovery beers and hot chocolate. And that was a sort of mid-trail coming down into Switzerland. Here we are back again. Thank you for your patience here. So we're here, we're working our way down, taking a left-hand turn into Switzerland down to La Foulie, which is a little typically Swiss town. Here's our accommodations there. Typically Swiss, punctual staff, friendly, congenial, very cheesy meals, but lovely, lovely. Next day, we're headed down this beautiful valley, down, into these little hamlets along the way, and then in the distance, we were going up, and came over the top of that hill, that hillside, through the woods, to the little town of Scheu, which is coming up next. Here it is. Again, it's an image I got off the internet, so it's a little funny, but not surprisingly, Scheu has a lac. And there it is. Here we are having beer recovery in Scheu. Had another lovely hotel. Let's stop there, right there. 3 miles west of Scheu is a place I was 50 years ago to this with my math teacher. We spent a night in this Swiss Alpine club hut, the Cabane de Triomphe. Anybody been to Cabane de Triomphe? It's amazing. It looks over this glacier, this plateau glacier, so it's like a bowl filled with ice. It's not moving its way down. The Glacier de Triomphe goes down over here. The mountains in the back are the French frontier. The other side of that is Chamonix. So we're right in the frontier here. Tom, my math teacher, and I had this extraordinary dinner after climbing all day. There's only 2 ways up there. They're both pretty exposed. You don't need ropes, but it's pretty exposed. So we were going to do it on our trip. But we sat and watched the sunset go over the ridge, and then we saw the most spectacular panoply of stars. Because we're up at about 10,000 feet here. Amazing. So that's my memory of the most exquisite place in the Alps that I can think in my memory. Okay, so the next, this is In Scheu, looking up this valley, I didn't talk about it, but this is the Val d'Arpet. Up here, this little notch is a variant. You can take this as a variant to the TMB. I have no idea why anyone would do that, unless you were like 19 and really limber and strong. I did it with Tom. It's a scree slope all the way up, pretty scary, and then very steep, and then you go over the top and you go down into Trillon. So I took a picture of that because I hadn't been there in 50 years, but we didn't want to do that. We went around this mountain you see to the right to get to our next stop. So that was a pretty long day, but not too long. We'll go to the next one, Ruth. This is the trail looking down into the Rhone Valley. This is Montigny, the Swiss town, city down there in the Rhone Valley that we look down on. Again, very typical trail along the way. This is my brother Nick. Very typical lunch. We would buy cheese and sausage and bread and mayonnaise in the tube and chocolate and steal eggs from the breakfast lunch, breakfast buffet. That was our usual lunch. We could get bag lunches sometimes from the hotels, but this was preferred. So we stopped, the second to last night, we stopped at Col de la Forclaz, which is just above Montigny. It's almost at the French frontier, so we're kind of closing in on our final view. Here we are again. Col de la Forclaz is up there. We're going over the ridge to Col de Mont into Switzerland, back into France rather, which is right about here. The frontier is right about there. And then you tumble down this hillside here into Trillon, and but we didn't do that. We came down, well, let me show you with the slides. This is coming out of Trillon. This is typical Swiss. If they can't tunnel through it, they create these incredibly strong walkways, which was this over the town of Trillon, which was perfectly safe, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't put a trail there, so they put this amazing walkway that we did. And we're going up in here to it's over here, I think, to the Col de la Seigne, one of those two, to get to the French frontier. Okay, Ruth. So here we are on that trail looking down at Trillon. We're working our way up to the top, and here we are at the top now. Over the top. Didn't stop for lunch there. I guess we did quickly. We had to bundle up because it got a really, really strong cold wind coming from the valley. This is looking down the valley of the Arve. Chamonix is way down there. Argentière, where we were headed for the night, is right there. Here's a really good opportunity to see the balcon, how it goes up steeply and then it levels off where the hiking is happening, the skiing is happening up there. Okay, thanks, Ruth. The next day, we could have just tumbled down the valley to Chamonix, but the next day was the best day by far. We came up the trail. You can see the valley was in fog. It was bluebird up above. Awesome, awesome. And this particular trail rises 1,500 feet out of Argentière. A couple of fixed ladders in places, so it's fairly exposed. You have to kind of take a deep breath and climb these ladders. There is a way around it. It's kind of long, but we did that. We stopped for photographs. Mont Blanc is somewhere up in there. The fog was coming in and out. We waited for to see a couple of friends we were hoping to find. And the next slide will show you. Nope, that's not the friend. That's me. Next one, Ruth. We came around the corner and that greeted us. Yeah. And then the next slide, that was there. 2 regal ibex, a whole herd of them actually, were there. We were hoping to see them the whole time. And these guys were so cool. They were 10 meters away from us, didn't move a muscle. They had obviously seen a few hikers in their day. So they were fantastic. It was like something out of like Disney animatronics. They were right there for us. They were calm, but then, like a minute later, this thundering sound came over the ridge, and a rescue helicopter from down in Chamonix came over the ridge to rescue a hiker who had fallen down or had hurt herself on the trail to pluck her off the mountain. So these guys took off. And we never saw, actually, because the fog rolled in, we never saw whether the helicopter actually made its recovery or not. I don't think it did. And these guys took off. So we continued up to Lac Blanc, which is the white lake, little lake, up on the ridge with a little hut there if you could get some meals. We basically shared our last meal together, our last luncheon meats, luncheon foods together there, and then we tumbled down from there, down the ridge. Okay, back to Asterix, my porte-bonheur, my good luck charm. I had this on my bureau for years. My son had given it to me, I think. Asterix, if you don't know, is this beloved cartoon character. Asterix and his sidekick Obelix are Gauls. They live in this little town in Brittany in Gaul, and they confound Julius Caesar because they have these. He has superhuman strength when he drinks this potion that is basically his town doctor concocts for him. But I glued him to my brim of my hat. I have it right here, and he brought us good luck. We didn't get sick. We didn't get injured. But it was a great conversation starter and a smile maker as we were coming through places. I got, whoa. It was pretty cool. So Asterix was my bonheur. Okay, next Ruth. Here he is. Yeah, there's Asterix. There's Obelix and their little doggy. And it's one of the books that they've done. It's the most published book anywhere in the world, I think. Okay, so now we are up here somewhere. Lac Blanc is right there. Our goal was just to tumble down the mountain to La Flégère, which is right there. We had already done this section 10 days before. And from here, this is Le Bois-Vent, which we went up. The trail kind of follows underneath Bois-Vent and then tumbles down into Les Houches, which is out of sight right there. There you can see Bellevue, which we took the lift up, or right there, I guess. So we decided not to do that. Again, the outfitter, and most people who do the TMB don't do that last downhill because it's really long and it's really on 10-day-old knees. It's a long, long slog down to Les Houches. So we just decided that we were done, that we had accomplished our mission. So we came down the lift into town and headed back to our cozy hotel. So we didn't do these two, but we kind of covered above, and then we missed this last section from right about here down into Les Houches. So we kind of technically didn't complete the tour completely, but we felt as though we had. We were feeling pretty good about ourselves. Our knees were feeling good. I've been moving quickly here. Let's see if I can get caught up here. I need to say a quick thing about Dwight. He was a senior member of the group, 74 years old, lives in Northern California, a composer, a classical music composer, and a very talented musician. A speaker of, did I want to talk about Dwight? No. Spoke German and French beautifully, and since he was happily divorced, every woman we met on the trail, he talked up. It's like, where's Dwight? Oh, there's that brunette back there. So he was the most extraordinarily extroverted, loquacious person I've ever met in my life. And I happen to be a card-carrying and founding member of the Intergalactic Introvert Society. And the idea of talking for 5 to 7 hours on the trail was completely daunting to me. And so I didn't. I mean, I listened a lot, like that's kind of key. But all you had to do with Dwight was push play. He was off to the races, especially if it had something to do with music. But I would wake up in the morning and I would go, oh man, what am I going to think of to talk about? 5 hours, 6 hours? But I didn't have to, it was mostly just listening. So he was awesome. He was also a very, very talented piano player. So in Champé-Lac, he kept us up late into the night. We stayed up till 9 o'clock while he entertained us on the piano. It was fantastic. So he was a great, great addition to the team. Okay, so that covers trail conversations, and I think we've covered pretty much anything. So we accomplished our mission, fairly strenuous daily hiking, spectacular settings, delightful camaraderie of friends that we got to know old and new, and we felt strong and stronger every day. I don't think I felt as strong since like 20 years ago as I did at the end of that trek. It was pretty great. It doesn't take long to lose it, but I was feeling pretty strong. So we avoided injury, top 5 life experience for me for sure. Would we do it again? We decided no, but there's plenty of other things. I'm sure some of you would recommend something to us. I'm sure Lynn could recommend a few things too, because you've done a lot. So my long-held dream to do the TMB, for which I had stratospheric expectations, met those expectations, maybe exceeded them. So it was pretty great. I'm going to finish up just by saying a couple last little things that might answer questions for you. How much did it cost? We chose Alpenwild, all of their support, not unguided, so a self-guided tour, which included accommodations and meals, logistical planning, mapping, things like that, $5,000. Kind of pricey, there are much cheaper ones too, but it was worth every penny, including some of the fine hotels we stayed in. I think if you go to the guided ones, they take you to the all-suite bathrooms and the cozy feather beds and things that I was hoping for. But it worked out just fine. So it was an awesome trip, and I hope if you have any questions, I've answered them. Thank you for being very patient as I fumbled with the slides, but awfully happy to share that with you. Yeah, here we are celebrating in Chamonix when we got down. Our usual libation there. And at the very end, I just put a couple of guidebooks. This is the Kev Reynolds guidebook, Cicero, guidebook Cicerone. I use that as a map that goes both ways around. And then there's one other one that didn't get shown. It's not that one. So thank you very much. Wow.